All right, hello everybody. Welcome again to the Educator Effectiveness Ratings and Data Appeals Window webinar. We're excited that you have joined us today. All right, so to get started real quickly, technology check. There is a PowerPoint on your screen, so hopefully you can see that. And otherwise, hopefully you can also hear facilitators because someone is talking right now. Again, if you have access through the conference call line, please mute your phone. Otherwise, we hear all those great sounds on your end. And if you're having any difficulty with technology, please use the Q&A pod or feel free to email us at mde@evals@michigan.gov. Also, on the radio screen, if you notice that Q&A pod, any questions about content or technical difficulties, please put there. We won't be using the raise your hand feature during this webinar. So a little welcome and introduction. I am Marty Snitchen, Department Analyst for the Office of Educator Excellence.
I'm Melanie Love, Departmental Analyst from the Office of Educator Excellence.
And I am Caitlin Groom, a Data Collections Analyst with CEPI, the Center for Educational Performance and Information, which works on overseeing the REP, Registry of Educational Personnel application.
So our purpose and agenda today, basically to ensure that districts and educators have a clear understanding of educator effectiveness ratings by reviewing the following. So we'll look at the legislation influencing educator evaluation, effects on certification, ratings and data presented and not presented in MOEX, and then that process of submitting an appeal to the rep, and also just kind of more information about the data appeals window and what both educators and administrators should be doing during this time. So without further ado, we'll kind of dive into legislation. The first piece is actually one that came after the Educator Evaluation Law. So Public Act 170 of 2016 kind of defined what teacher was for the sake of evaluations. So kind of broke it down to needs a valid Michigan teaching certificate or authorization, is employed or contracted for by a school district, and is assigned to deliver direct instruction to pupils in grades K to 12 as a teacher of record. So those are the kind of three main criteria to fit that definition of teacher as it's related to evaluations. And obviously in Public Act 173 of 2015, the Educator Evaluation Law, MCL 380-1531J, which took effect on July 1st of this year, tied educator effectiveness ratings to the progression to the professional certificate, basically requiring 3 effective or highly effective ratings for the most recent school years, or 3 non-consecutive ratings if it came with a recommendation from his or her current school administrator. And then 1531K, which took immediate effect, affected the progression and renewal of the advanced professional certificate. And here, 3 out of your 5 most recent annual year-end evaluations must be highly effective in order to advance to that certificate. And there may not be an ineffective rating within those 5 most recent years. And again, it should be noted that those who are renewing the standard and professional certificate are not affected by these laws. It's just that progression to the professional and progression and renewal of the advanced professional. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. To kind of help teachers in certain situations, there was administrative rules change. The provisional teaching certificate is now named the standard teaching certificate. And that standard teaching certificate is now able to be renewed every 5 years in perpetuity without having to progress the professional teaching certificate. So in the past, in most cases, it was, 2 allowable renewals of that provisional certificate, and each renewal was 3 years in length. And after those 2 renewals, they'd have to progress the professional teaching certificate, and that's no longer the case. The standard teaching certificate can be renewed every 5 years in perpetuity, as long as they meet all attached criteria. Effectiveness ratings have other outcomes other than just being tied to uh, certification. So the highly effective rating, if a teacher has two highly effective ratings or sorry, two highly effective ratings or effective ratings in their two most recent evaluations, two observations are not required. So basically, 380.12.49 subsection 2E3, there is a requirement that each teacher needs two observations, with one of those being unscheduled. But in that piece of legislation, it states that if they have two effective or highly effective, the two observations is not required. It does not specify how many observations is required. It just says two is not required. And then three consecutive highly effective ratings means that the district may choose to conduct biannual evaluations. So if you choose to do biannual evaluations for a teacher who's had those three consecutive highly effective ratings, that's fine. Every other year they'd be evaluated. If any of those biannual evaluations is effective, they immediately would go back to annual evaluations. More effectiveness label outcomes. The ineffective rating. Three consecutive ineffective ratings leads to dismissal. The mid-year progress report and IADP are required for an ineffective rating and a minimally effective rating. And also for first-year probationary teachers. Non-probationary teachers may appeal an ineffective rating within 20 days of notice of the rating with no more than 2 appeals in 3 years. That's also outlined in the legislation. Appeals are a local process, but legislation does specify that specific appeal. And then students shall not be assigned to be taught in the same subject area for 2 consecutive years by a teacher with 2 recent consecutive ineffective ratings. If for some reason the district cannot meet that piece of legislation, they do have the option to notify parents that they will have to have their child in a classroom with that teacher of 2 ineffective ratings in the same subject area. So because of these requirements, we do have the data appeals window. The data appeals window is again open September 1 to December 1 of 2018. Actually, the first business day in December, so I believe this year that's the 3rd. So during this time, districts and PSAs can submit data appeals within the REP for inaccurate teacher evaluation data submitted for any of the past 5 years. So any data in the past 5 years which has been found to be inaccurate can be updated during this time, and that includes data that you as a district has found to be inaccurate, or data that a teacher has notified you that they have something in writing that says this rating, but in MOEX they're seeing this rating. For teachers, if they do find that their data is inaccurate, they will work with the district. And then appealed ratings are available for viewing in MOEX as soon as they're entered in the REP by the district. So there's no week waiting period or anything like that. Once they're entered, they get pulled over into MOEX. It should be noted that this appeals window is specifically for the purpose of appealing errors in the reporting of data to CEPI. This is not necessarily the window for contesting an outcome of evaluation. All that contesting an outcome of evaluation would all be a local process and could really happen at any time frame. This September 1 to December 1 of 2018, these data appeals windows are specifically, the time that inaccurate data in the REP is able to be updated. So during this time, it's important that educators do a couple of things. So please, if you are an administrator, make sure you share this with your educators. But educators in instructional assignments need to log into MOEX and check the accuracy of their evaluation data. For educators who are in non-instructional assignments, because obviously there are some certificated teachers out there who are non-instructional assignments, and they'll want to obviously check, they can check in MOEX as well, but if they've been coded non-instructionally, they want to contact the district to 1, see if they've been having ratings entered on their behalf, 2, if they are ratings being entered on their behalf, to get a printout of those for their own records. After teachers have looked kind of in MOEX to see their ratings, if there is a discrepancy, they need to contact their district that reported the data and learn about the district's process for submitting a data appeal. And then to be proactive and follow up to ensure that appeal is submitted during that time frame, September 1 to the first business day in December. At this point, we can pause for questions. Please feel free to enter any questions as we go along in that Q&A pod. We'll try to get to every question as we can, and if there are any that we cannot get to, we'll make sure to answer those and send those out in a follow-up email to everybody. Not seeing anything being entered right now, so we'll move along to certifications that require ratings.
Thank you. Thank you, Marty. So we're going to talk about which certifications require ratings. And the first thing you should know, or the first question you might be asking is, who needs ratings for certification? So basically, most all certificates that need certification are involving progressing from a lower certificate to a higher certificate. For example, progressing to the standard teaching certificate from the professional teaching certificate would require you to have teacher effectiveness ratings. Progressing from the standard career technical education or CTE certificate to the professional teaching certificate would require you to have ratings. And progressing from the professional teaching certificate to the advanced teaching certificate would require you to have ratings, as well as the one exception would be for renewing the advanced professional certificate. You also would need to have ratings, and that is the only certificate that requires ratings to progress as well as to renew. Who does not need ratings for certification? So teachers who are not progressing to the next level certificate will not need ratings to renew their standard teaching certificate. You do not need ratings to renew a professional teaching certificate. You do not need ratings to renew a standard CTE certificate or to renew a professional CTE certificate. Also, non-teaching positions such as school administrators, licensed school guidance counselors, and school psychologists also do not need ratings in order to be certified. And now we are going to turn to Caitlin Groom to talk about educator effectiveness ratings appeals in the REP.
Thank you, Melanie. So when we are talking about educator effectiveness appeals within the REP, we are really talking to the authorized users of the REP application. So if you are a district who needs to have an appealed rating submitted, that does not mean you should go out and kind of authorize somebody to be your rep user. These are people that exist already in the district. They do twice a year rep submission. So if you are a rep authorized user, please make your educators know that your folks in the district, your educators there, that you are a resource that can help with those appeals being submitted within the REP application. So as Marty has already mentioned, the educator effectiveness appeals window will go from the beginning of September through the beginning of December of every year. And as a REP authorized user, those dates should sound familiar. Those are the REP fall collection windows. During the appeals window, it really is just for educator effectiveness data. There is no new assignment codes that can be added, so there's not a place for that. We don't have the capacity to collect new assignment information or employment information. So if you weren't reported by the district in the REP collection, then there's no data to really appeal. The appeals window does look at the last 5 years worth of data, and you can appeal 1 or 5 of those years in kind of one fell swoop that we'll talk about. You do have to follow the instructions, and it's really important to know that you can only submit or update those appealed ratings that have been originally submitted by your district. So if you have someone who came to you from another district and that rating from the other district needs to be appealed, you will not have access to that. So that educator will need to go back to the original district that submitted that rating, their former employing district, to have that rating submitted. So now we'll kind of go over the basic process for submitting those appealed labels. So this screen should look familiar if you're a rep authorized user. This is the main menu of the rep page. So after you've logged in, you'll go ahead and go to the personnel search function and select personnel search. Oops. Here you will want to enter the core demographic information of the employee that you need to submit an appealed rating for. I would highly encourage you to use the PIC number to search for these records. So if you were just searching by the information put into this screen here for John Smith, you will get several hundred results returned for John Smith, and you'll have to look through all of them to find your John Smith. If you use a PIC number or a social security number, you should only get one result. So it's much easier and concise to find your employee than sifting through several pages of employees. So once you enter that core information there, you click search. And this will be the results that are displayed. So if you see in the far right column there, you get the details button, and that will take you to a summary of educator effectiveness. Now, if you click the details button and the employee has never been reported by your district or has never been reported with educator effectiveness data, so you can optionally submit educator effectiveness for any of those assignments that do not require educator effectiveness labels in the end of your collection. But if you have not optionally submitted data for those employees, you will get the message at the bottom of the screen. And that message says, based on the PIC submitted, you do not have proper security access to the district level data, or there is no data to display. So if you get that message, that's a good indication that either you've picked the wrong employee, in this case the wrong John Smith, or that you've never submitted educator effectiveness data for an employee optionally. So those are things to keep in mind when you get that message saying that there's no data. So when you click on an employee that you have reported in your end of your rep collections and that does have educator effectiveness data, this is the summary screen that you should see. You will see your submitting school district name. You will see the assignment code that they were submitted with, the employee, and you will see their current rating. So the current rating is what should be displayed in MOEX at any given time. Those should match what the teacher is telling you or the educator is telling you isn't aligned right now. And if you select the drop-down menu, it will provide you with a list of the available educator effectiveness labels. So you can appeal any of the school years that are present there in that 5-year window by just selecting the drop down and selecting the rating that they should have received. So that is in alignment with the paper documentation of the ratings that everyone was in agreement that they submitted or that should have been submitted, and it was erroneously submitted with another value. So once you have selected from the drop down, either for the one school year or for all the school years that need to be appealed, then you just go down to the bottom of the page and click save. When you click save, it will not take you to a new page. It will stay right on the same exact educator effectiveness summary page there. But what you should see happen is the rating that was previously under current should bounce over to the previous educator effectiveness ratings in the far right column there. And the rating that you selected in the change to drop down will then bump up to the current rating. So once you confirm that those changes have taken place and that they are appropriately recorded, then that is your cue to tell the educator that that data has been submitted and that they should verify it within the MOEX system. So this summary page is also the screen that you can use for those non-instructional employees that were submitted with optional educator effectiveness or your administrators who are unable to see their data in MOEX. Using the summary screen will give them the information about what ratings they were submitted with. So keep that in mind when you have folks asking for what ratings they were submitted with, looking to verify that if they're not in the MOEX system. So if you have educators who are not seeing their ratings in MOEX, the number one culprit for kind of a misalignment between the REP and MOEX system is duplicate pick numbers. So unfortunately that does happen sometimes. So if you have an educator that you are certain you have submitted educator effectiveness data for in the end of year REP collections, your first step will be to have the teacher verify their MOEX account number, the pick that's tied to their MOEX account, and verify that that's the same pick number that you're submitting in the REP application. If it is not the same number, then you will need to contact CEPI. We will perform pick resolution, and then the primary pick will be used across both applications, removing that duplicate pick, and then the systems know that we're talking about the same person. The other reason why an educator may not see their ratings in MOEX has to do with the assignment codes that they were submitted with in your end of year collection. So as Melanie alluded to, there are only some subsets of educators that need educator effectiveness data in order to renew certificates. For example, your administrators are not one of those groups that require educator effectiveness data to renew or advance their certificate, but they do require educator effectiveness data. So if they are submitted with an assignment code that was not one of those that needs the educator effectiveness requirement to renew or advance their certificate, then they won't display in MOEX. And that's where you can use that summary screen to print out for that individual to let them know that there is educator effectiveness data tied to them. It's just not being used for certification purposes. And again, unfortunately, if you have someone who was like a substitute teacher in a previous collection and then they didn't have their assignment code updated for the end of year collection, they cannot have that assignment code changed to one of the core instructional assignment codes. So unfortunately, it really emphasizes the importance of reviewing the assignment code detail reports and assignment code reports within the REP to ensure that all of your educators are being appropriately reported with the correct assignment code. And the other kind of exception that we have here for districts that have closed or for closed schools, typically this will apply to public school academies or charter schools. So if you have worked, or if you have educators who have worked for a charter school or a PSA that has since closed, we will direct them to contact the management company and the authorizer of that PSA. And they should have the paper confirmation of what should have been submitted. We will then ask both of those agencies to supply that paper documentation with the ISD. The ISD will then validate that that is true and they need to have the label appealed, at which point then CEPI will receive that documentation from the ISD to address the appealed rating. The only exception for that is for the EAA, the Education Achievement Authority. We have made an exception in the system for the EAA employees who need to have their ratings appealed to be able to contact Detroit Public Schools Community District to have their appeals submitted by their authorized users. So that's only in the case of the EAA. If you've never worked for the EAA, then that will not apply for you. Are there any questions related to the actual submission in the REP of the Educator Effectiveness Appeals? Pause here for you to submit those in the Q&A pod. All right, I'm not seeing any questions, so with that, I will turn it back to Melanie to talk about how to read those ratings in the MOEX system.
Thank you, Caitlin. And yes, let's talk about how to read the ratings in MOEX. So first of all, let's talk about who can look at the ratings. So a lot of people worry sometimes that if they get an ineffective rating or a rating that is less than what they want, that it will impede them from finding other employment in the case that they want to leave that district. And this is not necessarily the case. Educator effectiveness ratings are entered along with assignment codes into the Registry of Education Personnel, or the REP, and are only viewable for the teachers that they were entered for, teachers who are coded as instructional, and they are used for certification purposes in MOEX. They're not used for hiring purposes. Only the teacher and select authorized employees at NDE and CEPI can view teacher effectiveness ratings, and districts can only view the ratings that they enter. Okay. So let's look at what the ratings page looks like in MOEX. So when you log into your MOEX account, you will see your home page, which looks like this. In the middle of the page next to home page, it will normally have your name printed there, and then it'll say home page right next to it. In this case, that the name has been blurred out, but the name of the individual who owns this page would be printed there. And so if you want to look at your effectiveness ratings, you would click on the tab that says effectiveness ratings on the left-hand side of the screen, or in the lower third of the screen where the green circles are. And once you click on that effectiveness ratings tab, this is what you will see. All of the ratings are listed with school year, district, submission date, and rating. And the ratings that have a hyperlink, if you click on that hyperlink, you will see the history of that rating. In the case of the rating for this individual for the 2014-2015 school year, you can see that that rating was appealed and changed. So it went from effective, which was submitted in June of 2015, to highly effective, and that appeal was submitted in October of 2016. So if there's a case where a rating has been changed due to an appeal, that is what it will look like, and that is how the data will look when you click on the hyperlink for that rating. So in some cases, there will be no data on the ratings page, and this is what it will look like when there's no data. And so this can happen for a number of reasons. For one thing, your district may have reported you as non-instructional incorrectly, in which case your ratings would not appear in the on the MOEX ratings page, as Caitlin was saying, because if a teacher is not, if an individual is not in an instructional position, there's no reason for them to have ratings pulled from the rep into MOEX. Or the district correctly reported you as non-instructional, in which would be the same case, your ratings would not be pulled from the rep into MOEX, because you do not, as a non-instructional, in a non-instructional position, you do not need ratings to renew your certificate or to progress your certificate. There's also a case where non-public schools who have not opted in for ratings, those employees would not be able to see ratings in the rep, and those schools need to opt in to have the ratings pulled from the rep into the pulled into the non-public school personnel report, the NPSPR, which is what the non-public schools use, the counterpart to the rep for public schools. So again, ratings are not used. Ratings are used only for certificate progression, and those are the ones that would be pulled into MOEX. And also, it's important to remember that incorrect assignment codes cannot be corrected, or missing ratings cannot be added during the appeals window. The appeals window is just for correcting inaccurate ratings that have been submitted. Okay. Okay, and speaking of missing years, this ratings page shows you two instances where there are missing ratings. For the first one, the 2015-2016, 2016 school year is missing from this ratings page. And that can be for a number of reasons. For one thing, the district did not report the teacher as being employed for that school year incorrectly or correctly. If you were not reported as being employed for a school year, then you would not have a rating submitted for in the rep. If it's a mistake, then you need to contact your district and get a printout of your rep submission. Um, Also, the 2010-2011 school year, the rating would be missing as it is in this case because the submission of ratings were voluntary during that year. So a lot of individuals did not have ratings submitted for that year. And again, incorrect assignment codes cannot be corrected, and missing years or ratings cannot be added during the appeals window. So we want to reiterate that. Okay, so in this one you have a case where this individual has multiple ratings for the same school year. As you can see, they have about 8 different ratings here. And the reason for this could be that they did actually work in multiple school districts, and each district evaluated this person and entered effectiveness ratings for him or her. Or a non-employing school district entered a rating in error. Maybe they used the wrong pick number for someone else, and it ended up in this person's data. Or the person taught virtual or online classes, and they taught in an actual classroom, in which case they would have been evaluated for both the online and the classroom positions, and they were given ratings for both, or for more than one in this case. So in that case, that is why you would see multiple ratings in the same year. For certification purposes, the rating will default to the higher rating. In this case, this person's highest rating was highly effective, so that is the rating that will count for the 2017-2018 school year. The only exception would be for the advanced professional certificate, and ineffective rating would default to the lower rating, so you could not progress to an advanced professional certificate with an ineffective rating within the 5 years prior to applying for that certificate. But that is the only case where it will default to that ineffective rating. And now we'll take a minute to see if we have any questions.
All right, doesn't look like we have any questions. So, oh, we just got a question come in. So on slide 35. So the question is, on slide 35, what did the asterisk portion mean? So looking at the multiple districts in the same year, incorrect ratings cannot be removed during the appeals window. So basically, because employee data and assignment codes are considered historical data that has already been sent to the federal government and researchers, those items cannot be removed or added during the window. Just ratings can be updated from one rating to another rating. And we have had a couple questions come in about the PowerPoint being available to print. And yes, at the end of our presentation, it will be available in the file share. At the bottom of your screen, also, we'll be sending a follow-up email with a copy of this presentation deck for you to have. So these will be available for you. All right, hopefully that answered the question. If If not, please submit another question and we'll make sure to get it cleared up. Yeah, so a follow-up question and just they can be updated, but they can't be removed. Correct. The ratings cannot be removed. All right, so we'll begin to wrap up our presentation here. So basically, in the next week, you will receive an email with the completed Q&A. We've only had a couple questions roll in here, so if however many we get, we'll make sure that we compile those question answers and send those out to you. You'll also receive, as I just stated, the PowerPoint deck as a PDF file, but a copy of that, and also a link to this recording. So you have a link to the recording. Um, next week, you'll be receiving those things. Actually, it'll probably be this week at the end of this week, and obviously this is today's webinar that's listed here. So this is the last webinar that we have scheduled. This is the last webinar that we have scheduled for public schools. There will be a presentation for private schools this Thursday at 4 o'clock as well. But in early October, this recording will be posted on our webinar page. So you'll be able to access the ADA compliant version of the recording at that time. The recording that will be sent to you will be the Adobe Connect version here as you see it. And then between September 1st and December 1st, obviously this is the data appeals window when effectiveness rating data for the past 5 years can be updated for those inaccurate ratings. And to make sure that, one, as administrators and at the district level, you're kind of checking ratings for any kind of errors that you notice, and also making sure that educators are aware to check their ratings in MOEX to make sure there's no inaccuracies. It really is important to share this information with the educators in your building. So just more resources for you, and these links will be live when I send you the copy of this PowerPoint, and they're also available here at the bottom of your page. So just on the educator evaluation side, we do have a document kind of showing what educators need to be doing during this time period. Then also our evaluation FAQs and our evaluation at a glance document. For certification purposes, we have the how to read your effectiveness screen, and that's a lot of the slides that Melanie talked about in her presentation, come from that document. And then we also have a web page of certification guidance documents for all sorts of certifications and authorizations and permits and everything. So that link goes to a page of several documents, several guidance documents. From the rep, the educator effectiveness appeals, a lot of the slides that you saw today are in that document. And then also the fall 2018 data field descriptions are linked here. And then here we just have some resources, just the CEPI main page and rep information page. The Office of Educator Excellence main page, the Educator Services page is linked there. The MOEX page and Educator Evaluation resource page is also linked here. And then finally, any further questions, please make sure that you contact us. For questions on educator evaluations, you can contact mde-edevals@michigan.gov. For certification questions, MOEX support at michigan.gov or phone 517-373-3310. And then for CEPI, on specific questions about the rep and entering those appeals, you can contact them at cepi@michigan.gov or 517-335-0505 extension 3. With that, we thank you very much for joining us today. We're excited to have you, and yeah, please feel free to contact us if you have any further questions about this content. Thank you and have a wonderful afternoon.
Bye.